Welcome to this presentation on conservatism. Conservatism is, again, a very influential political idea, a political viewpoint in American history. This presentation will focus on five important concepts of conservatism: flawed humanity, transcendent morality, prudence, variety, and order. Some background to conservatism. Conservatism has been around for a long time. I think, as we know it, it probably emerged in the 1600s. People like Thomas Hobbes and Edmund Burke were early conservative thinkers, and James Madison during the constitutional period, Nathaniel Hawthorne in the 1800s, T.S. Eliot, Ronald Reagan, Russell Kirk in the 20th century. Are some important conservative thinkers. And I think as one thing is very important to understand from the beginning is that really early on in American history, we had two ideas: classical liberalism and conservatism. And much of the foundation of our political conversation was the interplay between those two ideas. So conservatives believe, first of all, that all people are inherently flawed, what we call flawed humanity. Um, People themselves have within them the capacity to make the wrong decision. Is a fundamental conservative idea. Conservatives would argue that because of that, because people are flawed, the institutions that people create are imperfect. And so as a result, conservatives are very, you didn't even think about the word conservative. They're very careful when it comes to putting too much emphasis on the possibility of creating any sort of progress or utopian type of existence, because central to their thinking is the idea that people are flawed. Because people are flawed, conservatives argue that we need a transcendent morality to guide us. So people are flawed. Because we're flawed, we need guidance. We need something to direct and lead us to something better than we would create on our own. And for conservatives, that's what they call transcendent morality, a set of higher principles, a sort of understanding of morality, of right and wrong, that is transcendent. It's above and beyond ourselves. It's bigger than people. The source of transcendent morality for conservatives would be time-honored traditions, our history, our government institutions, and our religious beliefs. A lot of times people think it only has to do with religion, and that's incorrect. Obviously, religion has a lot to do with it, but there are many pieces of transcendent morality that kind of work together. And sort of a simple way to understand this is that conservatives love to look to the past and see what's worked, and then use that as a guide to the present and to the future. So conservatives have a deep, deep belief in the concept of transcendent morality. Conservatives then develop from that idea the idea of prudence. For conservatives, tradition is a timeless and essential guide for ways of doing things today. They would look to tradition, they would look to things that work, and because of that, they will be very careful when it comes to political change. They would want to be prudent. They famously say that they prefer the devil they know to the devil they don't know. They don't like political experimentation. They don't like doing things that potentially have uh, unknown outcomes or outcomes that might be very negative. They're very concerned with making a decision that makes things worse, as we often do when we make political decisions. And so conservatives are more concerned with the risks of a decision than the potential benefits. So they're going to be very careful, be very thoughtful, and advocate a prudent change, a change that we are pretty certain is the right thing to do and will lead to a good result. Conservatives also believe in something they call variety. Conservatives argue that people vary greatly from each other. People are different from each other on many, many levels, and that essentially the only real equality that we see in people is that they are creations of and subject to the same transcendent morality, the same creator, if you go back to the classical liberal idea. They would say they're only equal to each other in that they are creations and they are subject to a transcendent morality. But beyond that, people are just different. There's tremendous variety in people. And conservatives don't see that as a negative thing. And it certainly should not be um, concluded that what they're saying is some people are better than others. They're just saying people are different from each other and that we should celebrate those differences. And so they do support equality before the law. Conservatives would argue that everybody should have the basic right of being treated equally before the law. But they are going to oppose man-made equalities of opportunity and condition. Any equality that has to be created by people, anything that has to be managed by the government or created by the government or society, conservatives would argue against because they would say, first of all, it's not possible because people are naturally different from each other. And secondly, it would be harmful because it would disrupt the interplay of the natural differences that we have that actually work together to kind of like pieces of a puzzle to get the best things accomplished for society. Conservatives also believe in order. So for a conservative, the priority of government is to create an ordered and stable society. If you think about some of the things we've already talked about, flawed humanity and variety and the other principles that we've discussed, the priority of government is to create an ordered and stable society, to maintain society. Think of the word conserve as the kind of key component of this way of thinking. Um, for them, for conservatives, government protects individuals and their property first. Freedom and equal opportunity as a negative right. We mean that by what we mean by that is not creating obstacles to equal opportunity. Those things are good. We should not allow people to create an obstacle to somebody's opportunity. We should allow people to be as free as possible. But that is secondary to the preservation of order. Conservatives are always going to argue for order first and freedom second. They also believe in the power of restraint for the purpose of establishing order. So they are going to allow the government to restrain people if it is to create and establish order. This power, though, should be limited by strict interpretation of the timeless and still relevant provisions of our Constitution or in another society, the laws that exist. It's important to note that conservatives believe in order. They believe in government maintaining order, but they also believe in limitations on the power of government to do such a thing because they are, again, mistrustful of people. So they're going to be mistrustful of too much power in the hands of government. They're also going to be mistrustful of too much power in the hands of people as well. And then lastly, conservatives believe that part of the order of society is to allow people, free individuals, to produce and consume in a free market economy with as little government intervention as possible. And so they are similar to classical liberals on that last point. So conservatives' priority of government is to create an ordered and stable society. Russell Kirk kind of summarized um, conservatism really well. He said, at bottom, then, conservatism is not a matter of economic interests and economic theories. It's not a matter of political advantages and political systems. It's not a matter of power and preferment. If we penetrate to the root, we discover that conservatism is a way of looking at the human condition. From revelation, from right reason, from poetic vision, from much study, from the experience of the species, so the conservative argues we humans have learned certain ways and principles of order. It is this order this old safeguard against private and public anarchy, which the conservative refuses to surrender to the evangels of progress. And so you get the sense here of this timeless set of principles, this transcendent morality that guides our thinking, and this reluctance to be experimenting politically, to be doing a lot of things that are not tried and tested, sort of the essence of conservatism. So this is a political advertisement from the early 1800s, and this advertisement is designed to basically oppose Thomas Jefferson, who's over here on the right, by using the image of George Washington, who was president in the 1790s, and as an example of conservatism. Jefferson was viewed as somewhat liberal and radical. You see, underneath Jefferson, there is a bunch of books, and they're all like the French philosophers, and you see the kind of imagery there. And then over here, under Washington, you have these three books, and if you look really closely, you see that the title of them are Order, Law, and Religion. So that foundational conservative idea of order, of the law, of tradition, of timeless absolute truth, and Washington being associated with those, and Jefferson being more associated with change and radicalism and liberalism to some degree. So this is a really good picture to help us understand that conservative thinking, order, law, religion. So in this presentation, we have discussed the 5 basic principles of conservatism. That conservatives believe in the idea of flawed humanity, that people are flawed. They believe in the need for a transcendent morality to guide people. They believe in prudence in making decisions and making changes. They believe that in variety, that people are different from each other, that we should celebrate that and not disrupt that, but allow the differences of people to work together to create the best society possible. And lastly, they believe that government should preserve order, that they should establish and maintain an ordered and stable society. A very important set of ideas that conservatism puts forward that have been a very important part of the conversation from the early foundation of the American Republic right through to today. So here are some things to think about with regard to conservatism. What are the strengths of conservatism? What are the weaknesses of conservatism? And are you a conservative? Why or why not?